All. It streams anywhere or plays anywhere that you like to listen to your favorite podcasts. Today we did the show live, and it is called And Security for All. It was super fun back here. We had a couple of random attendees that are sitting on the panel that just were lucky enough to walk by, and they joined the show today. But definitely try to catch our show. We have some pretty amazing guests. Tomorrow we have Michael Anderson. He was the former CISO for the Dallas County, and now he's with the independent schools in Dallas. Last week we had Richard Steenan, who does the cybersecurity yearbook every year. They wait in long lines for him out at RSA to sign his books. He's done several books. You can catch all of our past shows on the FutureCon YouTube channel, so check that out. So one of the things that we do at all of our events is we survey our local database, and we are always asking our database, who would you like to nominate? Is there someone in your organization that goes above and beyond to do the extra work of a cybersecurity practitioner? We know everyone in here works really hard, and we try to honor all of you at all of these events with all the content, all the food, the bar, everything. We really appreciate your hard work, and we know it takes a lot of effort to come out for the day when you guys probably have, or we know you have so much on your plate back at your office. So some of these people I'm going to announce, I think they did, some of them have left because they're that important, they had to leave, but hopefully most of you all are here. First one I have is Peter Paez. He's a lead security engineer from Klaveren. Peter, congratulations for all your hard work in the industry. You're welcome. Next person I have, which I definitely am going to mess up this name, Prem Kumar, cybersecurity lead at Charter. Prem, are you here? I know a couple of my honorees did leave, so we'll make sure we get that to them. Scott Keck, he is the Director of Technologies at CBC. Congratulations. Brian Laurie, which I'm pretty certain he left, but maybe he's here, Global Cyber Senior Manager at Mars. Brian, I heard him say he had to take a call and he was going out to his car. Daniel Stamer is the who I happened to just get to know today, Chief Information Officer at Sullivan Bank, and I know he is here. Congratulations. Dennis Klein, Associate Principal IT Architect from Mercy. Dennis, are you here? Jason Bearer, Information Security Analyst at First Bank. Jason? Congratulations. You're welcome. Kingsley Davis, Security Analyst 3 at Bi-State Development. Kingsley, are you here? Congratulations, Kingsley. Michael Bagger from Merit, Senior Information Security Analyst. Michael? Congratulations. You're welcome. Rich Cashel is Manager of Information Services at Hospital Sisters of St. Francis. Rich, are you here? Okay, now we're going to come to my panelists. So we have, we really appreciate Marc's dedication to our events every year. Marc Ashworth, he's Chief Information Security Officer, Senior VP at First Bank. Thank you, Marc. You know, I heard a great story about Marc today. One of our attendees that was a volunteer for us last year, she didn't have a job. She was just getting into the industry, and she now works on Marc's team. So how about a round of applause for Marc for you know, hiring the up and coming. And then I had the pleasure just a moment ago on my podcast to meet Renita Rhodes. I could hardly hear you, Renita, because of the audio, but it was awesome to get to know a little more about you. She's the VP Audit Manager from Wells Fargo, and here is your reward. Thank you. Thank you for all your hard work in the industry. Andre Van Klaveren. He is Vice President, Security Advisory Services at Equifax, and I just got to know him on the show as well. Thank you for being here. And Jonathan Kimmitt, he drove all the way from Tulsa. Now he'll be moderating the panel with Alias CyberSecurity, former CISO over at the University of Tulsa, Chief Information Security Officer, and my friend Jonathan. Okay, thanks, Jonathan. And Michelle Sickbert, who I just love, and she finally has said yes to sitting on the panel, Senior Director, Business Information Security Officer at Equifax. Thank you, Michelle. All right, well, I'm going to turn it over to the panelists, and, it's Michelle moderating. Sorry about that. So I'm happy to have Michelle moderate, so let's welcome all of our panelists.
Sorry, I'm not Jonathan. We may look a little alike, but Michelle Sickbert here. Thank you guys for joining us at 4 o'clock. I know we had to bribe you with a few drinks to listen to us, but we're going to make this awesome and fun. So I do have a few questions prepared for our panelists today, but what I do want to do is save about 15 minutes for you guys to ask some questions. The good news, or throughout the event and discussion, because if you ask a question, I can give you a drink ticket. So I'm also going to bribe you with drink tickets. Again, my name is Michelle Sickbert. I'm a Senior Director, Information Security Officer at Equifax. I support workforce solutions. I help, I do client security and manage our Center of Excellence. I've been there about 2 years, and then prior to that, I spent about 20 years at Citi. I'm going to just go ahead and just ask our panel to run through our panel and introduce themselves briefly. Thank you.
I'll start with me.
Yeah,
How's
sure.
it sound? All right, good. Hey, welcome everyone. Thanks. Andre Van Klaveren. I'm VP of Security Advisory Services for Equifax, our global team out of Atlanta. We are an internal-facing consultancy group of security solutions architects. Our job is to, we reform post-breach to ensure that we, first of all, find and fix vulnerabilities, of course, but the secure by design principle, right? Shift left twice. Educate and make aware our architects, our product teams, our engineers to make sure that we are securing our systems from design. That's effectively what we do.
We do a lot.
Well, we do
That's
a
good.
lot. That's a lot.
Thanks, Andre.
Thanks for having me. Yep.
Well, my name is Renita Rhodes, and I am a VP Audit Manager at, I'm going to say, financial institution, because other things. But what I do there, I look at all of cybersecurity. So I don't just look at one particular area. Anything that you guys are doing, we have to make sure you're doing it according to policy and you're actually protecting the data and information and protecting employees and our customers. But that is not all that I do. I am also an adjunct professor at 2 institutions, at Harris-Stowe State University and Maryville. So I teach 3 courses. I teach Intro to Cybersecurity. Right now I'm teaching Python and a SIM course at Maryville. I used to teach cyber law, and yeah, that was it.
Hi, I'm Marc Ashworth. I'm with First Bank, the CISO for there. I got 4 groups that report to me, not just cyber. So I got cyber, I got physical security, networking, and then financial crimes as well. So monitoring all the fraud and everything else that happens there. So been in the business for 30 plus years. Happy to be here again. Thank you, Kim, and everyone here on the panel, and thank you everyone for sticking around and getting in the way of your alcohol. So that, appreciate that. So, Jen?
How about now? Can you hear me now? Yes? No? That one? Okay. I'm Jonathan Kimmitt. Okay, here we go. I'm Jonathan Kimmitt, CISO of Alias CyberSecurity. Many of you have already seen me from the keynote. I primarily focus on... Whoa. Testing. Oh, okay. So I primarily focus on data security, privacy, compliance, and vCISO work. I help a variety of industries, help a variety of kinds of people. One of my most favorite things, speaking of teaching, is I actually am an adjunct instructor for a community college there in Tulsa Tech, and I teach cybersecurity for small business. And that's one of the things that I really enjoy doing because when we think about how many businesses out there in the world who are a target for a threat actor, many of them are very large organizations, and they've got maybe not as many as they would like, but a lot of resources. But a lot of the small businesses don't. So I love getting them in my classes and teach them. And the greatest comment that I've ever gotten was from the last class, and she turned to me and says, "Jonathan, every time you speak, you cost me money." So anyway, that's a little bit about me, and I'm really excited to be on a great panel of people, and this will be a lot of fun.
Thanks, folks. So as you can tell, we have a diverse panel today, and we are discussing the current cyber threats and strategic defenses against those threats. So I'll just go ahead and start with the first question. And, like I said, if you guys have questions throughout the panel discussion, feel free to raise your hands. We'll save some time at the end, but this is a open discussion. So first question that I have for you all is, what are the most significant emerging cybersecurity threats and vulnerabilities, and how should organizations prepare for them? Andre.
Awesome. Wow. So this is a very wide topic. There's actually a lot of emerging threats. But before I go there, and I'm not going to take them all up because I know you guys want to talk about emerging threats too. And I know I'm moving this mic, so sorry, audio guy, for having to constantly readjust my audio. But so before I go into, maybe I'll talk about one. I want to start somewhere else. So before we go into the shiny baubles, the new stuff that's coming that we're all afraid of, I want to make sure, I'm going to reiterate some things that I heard in some of the talks earlier today that I think everyone needs to be fully aware of and on top of before you start focusing on these emerging threats and these fancy cyber defenses that you're going to be putting in place soon. So last week, I was at the State of Cyber for InfraGard, right? And I had the pleasure of listening to Valerie Cofield, CISA's Chief Strategy Officer, speak at that event. And one thing she said a lot of really good things. And maybe we'll talk about InfraGard a little later. But she said many things, but one thing stuck in my brain as I was listening to her talk, and she said, quote, "Most threats against critical infrastructure are using known vulnerabilities, not 0 days." So my takeaway from that and my message to you is patch your things. But before I go a little bit more into that, Jamil Farshi, our esteemed CISO, said something recently too, and you'll see it in our 2023 security report that was just released this morning, is, I quote, "As new risks emerge, existing risks must be prioritized with equal vigilance." So those two statements, right, they really boil down to don't forget about your fundamentals, your foundational things, because criminals are creatures of opportunity. They don't go after your most critical controls, or they go after your least least implemented controls, right? Your weakest controls. They're going after the things that you aren't doing. And we're not perfect. No one's perfect. But if you're not paying attention to those, you're going to be compromised by not patching that end of service life Windows 2012 machine, right? Not AI and not quantum crypto. So I want to make sure I get that out first. So focus on those first. But when it comes to emerging threats, I'm going to focus on the emerging threats because there are some things today that you need to be focusing on. But because I got to speak first, I'm going to talk about the cool thing, quantum computing. So quantum emerging threat, I know, thank you. It's emerging. And when I mean emerging, it's years from now. Now, granted, it's accelerating. Matter of fact, it's accelerating faster than most people thought it would. And it will be a threat in the near future, but I still think it's years from now. And when I say that, right, just to be clear, the threat that quantum computing, because there's a lot of really good benefits that we'll have when we get quantum computing, but the threat, of course, that we're all focused on, or you should, is cryptography. One problem that quantum computing can solve very easily and quickly is asymmetric encryption, right? So the theory, the fear is as soon as quantum computing becomes viable, commercially available, but even prior to commercial availability, available to our state actors, because those are the ones that are going to have this technology first, right? They will gain access to data that they've been collecting that's encrypted that they can't crack today. So that's evolving. It's emerging. Years from now, maybe. NIST has done a really good job starting early with running contests, right, with identifying crypto ready or quantum ready crypto, right? The Kybers, the other algorithms that they've selected in the contest. But as you've already seen, some of those algorithms post-selection have fallen to attacks. So again, this is very, very much evolving. It's going to move fast. My recommendation to prepare for that is stay aware. Plug into your intel, watch the news, follow quantum computing, how quickly it's advancing. But to be prepared on the technical side, make sure that all of your TLS configurations are up to date. Right? TLS 1.3 is out, but no ciphers I'm aware of are included in that cipher suite, but soon they will be. So when the IETF starts publishing quantum safe cipher suites as part of their TLS spec, be ready, implement them as quickly as you can in a safe way, of course. So I'm going to stop talking about quantum. I'll pass the mic to someone else that wants to talk to some of the other emerging threats.
Another thing that I found when I was doing some research for a course for a university in Atlanta in regards to quantum, they did also state that you may want to change your passwords because they are collecting everyone's passwords now. And if you don't change them, of course, they're going to do the brute force. But with brute force attacks, with quantum, it probably takes seconds. But one other area I know everyone knows about AI and AI attacks. But one thing that popped up on my radar is I was talking to one of my friends. She works for AT&T. And I grew up with her. And so me and Bella was just speaking. And she was like, well, you know, what they found, and I was using this. With AI, you are able to come up with a lot of different products out there to make your life so much easier. But one that we found was called Otter AI. How many of you guys know about that? I love it. I use it for meetings outside of my organization. So if I'm meeting with WISEs, or I'm also working with NIST CyberSecurity Careers Ambassador Program, I use it for that. I didn't think anything of it. But the thing that Otter does, it's a bot, and whenever you log into your meetings, it comes on and it transcribes everything. He thought it was the greatest thing ever. Well, Bella told me, we found out that someone was using it and they were in a meeting with AT&T. So they were transcribing all of those meeting notes, and these people are from the outside. The problem with this AI tool is that it can gain a lot of your trade secrets during the meetings, PII information, and it is logging it on their servers. Now, we don't know what about their security posture because, one, I'm sure they're using an API. As we know, APIs are always not secure when they're developed. And we don't know what this company, and like I said, we don't know their security posture. We don't have a third party. We haven't done our due diligence. So we need to stop using it. I hate that because it is a great tool. The thing is, when, like I said, if you're using it and you have a meeting set up and it's outside, it can pop up on your computer, pop up in that meeting if you're meeting someone else outside. So just be careful with that one. That is an emerging threat because there are a lot of tools that are popping up every day using AI.
So it sounds like just making sure that your DLP controls are in place, up to date, to make sure that we're scanning for the appropriate AI, because there's, yeah, you're right, there's a ton of them.
Yep.
And they're coming down faster than we can keep track of them.
Yep.
So we need proper DLP tools to make sure that we're not, we don't have employees downloading those
Yep.
types of products to their computers or phones or whatever.
Yep,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
very true.
And awareness, right? I mean, technical controls in place to prevent leakages, but awareness
Yep.
for your staff
Definitely.
that can happen and what it means when it happens. Yeah.
Definitely.
Okay, so I'll combine a little bit of both of yours, and we'll kind of go there a little bit. So, one of the things that is not only emerging, but it's here in reality and it continues to grow is around BECs and how they are, scamming your different systems. Well, if you do any sort of validation of, your customer, you're validating either through voice or video. Something to be aware of, if you're not already, is the use of AI around, creating, false impressions of or images of, the person that might be calling in, and allowing them to then validate who they are, and then taking over or in our case, attempting to send money elsewhere and that sort of thing. So, I mean, if you think about it, within just a few seconds, they can easily train the AI engine to mimic you. So, if you have someone like myself who's all over the internet, through webinars and podcasts and everything else, there's plenty of data out there that can do my voice and likelihood. So hopefully no one's seeing this, but, and want to go that route. But, that's the reality of it. And even from Facebook or anything along that line, people's accounts are getting cloned and compromised and all that stuff all the time to be able to pull that data. And obviously those are probably going to be more targeted attacks, but it's something to keep in mind. And then as quantum becomes bigger and starts becoming more and more powerful off there, the combination of AI with quantum is, unimaginable on what all can happen with that sort of a processor. And even NVIDIA just announced that they are releasing the next generation of their chips here that's even more powerful than what they have right now. So, so their stocks just went up another 100 points. But those are the type of things that, in addition to everything that's been said here, to keep in mind, because that's happening now. There was a recent incident where a large sum was done because someone, they used a video call and did a BEC and transferred a bunch of money and pretended to be a CFO or president or whatever it was. So it's happening. It's happening now. Make sure you have your controls in place. Make sure on those type of calls that you are initiating that call versus them initiating the call. That's probably going to be the biggest protection at this point until things are, happening more. So anyway.
Testing. There we go. So I had not planned it, but I got to listen to all the answers that they gave and sit down here and contemplate. And I do a lot of incident response we have a team that does it, and I help out on that team. And what I find in a lot of cases when we're talking about threats and vulnerabilities and the risk associated with those, tools, the tools that are coming out, think about quantum computing or AI, they are making the attackers more efficient and allowing them to scale some, but it's the same attacks. And in fact, I make it mandatory for all of my staff to watch the Hackers movie once a year. And I got some chuckles, but here's the reality. Every attack in that movie is still being used successfully in environments right now, whether it be social engineering, whether it be phishing, taking advantage of a vulnerability, you name it. It's the same attacks that are being successful. The other piece that, there's actually two pieces that I want people to think about, because it's not necessarily a new vulnerability, but it's a different mindset. So we actually did a radio show on this a couple of months ago, but it was talking about how, when we think about an organization, and we've got some really great organizations up here on this panel. I'm the small guy in the group, a little tiny company, but the organizations spend a lot of money on their security controls. Buy firewalls for, they might spend $100,000, $200,000, $300,000 on firewalls, on SOC services, on IDS, on encryption, all these different things. So it's actually pretty hard to break into these organizations, depending on the type of attack. What's not generally hard is attacking your family. What kind of security controls do you put in your home? What kind of security controls is in your elementary school's program? So if I'm an attacker, why would I attack the organization directly when they've got a lot of security? I'm going to go after the home. I'm going to sneak in on the Roblox server, and I'm going to gain the trust of your kids, and I'm going to get them to install the game, and then I'm going to watch your network on at your home looking for vulnerabilities, hoping I might be able to get a hold of your laptop that you took at home from work and then inject a rat so that once you take it back to work, I now have a way in. So I guess it's not really so much an emerging vulnerability or emerging threat. It's a different thinking of how attackers can get access to a very secure environment. So when I talk to people, families are, we talk about people, I said in my keynote, people is priority for me. But I think we need to start looking beyond our direct organizations and start looking at our families, families of stakeholders, key individuals, start looking at schools, start looking at the community. Because, how many people here would give up their password if an attacker hurt their kids? Yeah, I had a lot of people nod their head. So I would hope that as an emerging security control, not just a threat and a vulnerability, is that the industry starts spreading out that security, that mindset, not only to the organization, but to the families, to the stakeholders, those core individuals that can really make a difference at the risk of the organization. So anyway, that's just my little tidbit off a tangent.
I love that tangent. Thank you. And I think we kind of touched on that a little bit at InfoGuard for the folks that were there, talking about critical infrastructure and our schools and, some of our healthcare organizations just don't have the security posture that we would expect them to have. So if you do have those relationships with your local school, your children go there, a gentleman mentioned this the other day at another conference, reach out to them. You guys are the experts. Talk to them about their security. Talk to them about their network. They want to keep your kids as safe as you want to keep your kids safe. So, that's really great. And, I heard a lot of things. We talked about basically going back to basics, making sure that we're actually patching. You made the mention of hackers. Yeah, that stuff's still going on. What was that, 94? 94, okay. I won't say that's when I graduated. We talked about deep fakes and how easy it is now because all of the videos that we have and the voice recordings, that's just open on the internet. Deep fakes are going to get fun. Deep fakes are going to get fun in October, November, I think. We've got BAC, we've got quantum computing, so we have all this new AI tech that's coming down the pipes. So what do we do, guys? Like, how do we prioritize all these cybersecurity initiatives? Because they're coming to us as faster than we can kind of manage them. So how do we prioritize these security initiatives and align them with the cyber threats that are out there today?
Risk assessments, I would say probably starting there because one, you need to identify your actual risks, and then you can prioritize those risks and then start looking at the emerging threats that are out there and kind of looking at the likelihood and impact that it will have on your organization. And then look at, some of the other trends. I'm just trying to look at some of my notes. And threat intelligence that is available. So I remember when Recorded Future first came out, I would say this was probably in it was mid-2000s maybe, before it morphed into what it is now. And it was they were kind of doing some predictions, I remember during that time frame. But what they're doing now is they're gathering all of the threats that are out there from the dark web, from the internet, and then they're able to feed that to you for those who are not using it. And it's a wealth of information, so you can kind of take that information into account also when you're trying to prioritize.
Thank you. Anyone else? Mark?
Yeah, I'll do a quick comment here. So, it's definitely knowing what risk you have in your environment and then what mitigating controls that you have and to determine what your residual risk is at that point. From there, you build your strategy and try to figure out what compensating controls, how quickly you can get them in, what's your budget, and then working with your executive management and the board to communicate that, and then start putting those controls in order to do that. You could also look, and you touched on a little bit about what sort of threat intel you have, and knowing who those threat actors might be that might be coming after your type of organization or your organization in particular. Are you more susceptible to a hacktivist or a nation state or someone that is, strictly out to, look for, a ransom or whatever it might be. So looking at what your risks are, what controls you have, and then tying that in with your budget, and then also using that budget amount to try to figure out what your threat profile might look like.
Thanks, Mark.
So I want to add to that, if you are not doing risk assessments every day, then you're not doing it right. I go into a lot of banks when I do my audits, and they do one risk assessment a year. That's it. Most of the time when I say, have you done a risk assessment, they hand me a vulnerability scan. That's not what we're talking about. But as security professionals, or even IT, this would be expand out, you should be constantly doing a risk assessment. If you see a news article about maybe a competitor, maybe a vendor, maybe someone that got compromised, you should immediately start doing a risk assessment. How is that going to affect me, or my organization? How's that going to affect our team? Could we have handled that any different had it been us? And you should be doing that with your team almost every day. And that gets people in the mindset of security. And it's not just your IT team, your IT security. This is, make sure you're talking with accounts payable, the other departments in your organization, your leadership. You should, again, be doing risk assessments with the whole team. Maybe not everybody every day, but can you imagine what you could accomplish if you went and talked to one person in a different department every day, and maybe it was a 10-minute risk assessment, or even better, do a tabletop with them. You know, and when I say tabletop, I'm not talking about a formal, official tabletop. Say, hey, we saw this thing. How would we handle this? If I gave you this scenario, what would you do in this? Oh, okay. I bet you we can make an improvement on that. Let's go work on it. That sort of tabletop. I was using her as an example, but that little tiny 10-minute tabletop, and you can get a real risk assessment of your organization. The other thing I want to say is I have clients, because of all the threats and the things they're just eliminating services. They have literally reduced down their online footprint for their customers to where every transaction has to be in person. And you know what? Their customers love it. They're not angry at all. For them to do business at the bank, they can't call in, they can't go on a website and do it. They have to come in person and do that transaction. And their customers love it. So anyway, just something to think about. Sometimes when we're thinking about security, simple things are very much more secure than the complicated things.
So that's a good point.
Thank you.
I'm going to wrap this up so certainly risk assessments, right? Identifying and evaluating the vulnerabilities and threats to your organization, your industry, the size of your company, right? The types of data you handle. Doing business impact analysis, right? So what is the impact to your business if you lose that resource, if you lose that data? And if you don't know what a risk assessment is, I think most people in this room likely do. But there are frameworks out there for doing risk assessments. NIST has them, ISO, IEC has guides for getting started doing risk assessments. Of course, there's third parties that do those. And of course, when it comes to the prioritization, sure, understanding threats and vulnerabilities against your organization, of course, regulatory and compliance comes into that, right? Probably regulatory and compliance is top of your list of things you want to address from a prioritization perspective. But I'm gonna pull this back to one of my responses to the first question we had, which is I think if you haven't done this already, you need to understand where you are from a maturity perspective in your organization when it comes to security and being able to address those threats, being able to even do risk assessments and BIAs. And that's something called a cybersecurity maturity model. There are models out there. There's professional, there's services and actual certifications you can get from a maturity model perspective. But they're questionnaires or surveys that you want to be very honest with, so you can get a good understanding of where you are in a maturity model, right? Are you at the ground floor, ad hoc, basically just dealing with things as they pop up, or are you extremely mature and being proactive and doing all these risk assessments, BIAs, et cetera? If you're in the software development industry, OWASP has the SAM, which is a software assurance maturity model. So if you're developing software, it's a survey that you will learn how mature are you in your software development, your SDLC, right? Very great tool. And there's some other software-related maturity models out there you can use too. I'm a fan of OWASP. Lots of great resources. Go out there, take a look. But yeah, know where you are first before you jump and skip those kind of foundational, fundamental things.
Thanks, everyone. So I heard a lot on the last responses. Really making sure that we have continuous monitoring, point-in-time assessments. While though good, don't really serve a purpose because they're that point in time. We need continuous monitoring. We need to actually assess the risks and really understand what do we have out there, what our compensating controls, what our residual risks are. And then, Jonathan, you kind of hit on my next question around tabletop exercises. And, my question for the panel is really how do you prepare for these potential cyber incidents to make sure that you are swift in reacting. And I'll just kind of share what we do at Equifax. So we do a lot of tabletop exercises like you mentioned. I'm actually responsible for writing and facilitating those, and we learn a lot. We bring everybody to the table from the president down to our architecture teams, to our legal counsel, and have them all in the room for several hours and go through a particular scenario. Where I see sometimes that folks are lacking is from a procedural perspective. So we feel like we have policies, we feel like we have documentation, we think it's there, we're looking at it and scanning it and updating it annually like we say that we do, but are we really deep down testing those things? So I think that that's one of the really good ways to prepare for a potential cyber attack is really test those policies, test them in a tabletop scenario, and really make sure that your procedures are on top of it and folks know the chain of command when the stuff hits fan. Anybody else do something a little bit different in relation to Jonathan?
So I do a lot of tabletops. That's one of the services that we provide to customers that we go in, either through VCSO or otherwise. But I also teach tabletops. I teach IT teams how to build tabletops. And there's lots of different kinds of tabletops. You have decision-making, scenario-based, war games, all these different ones. And what I encourage organizations to do is hopefully you have an incident response plan and an incident response policy with your playbooks and everything involved. You should do enough tabletops or more every year that every one of your playbooks gets tested. So I would encourage one major tabletop where you might bring in a third party to help you and help facilitate it. Might be that all-day thing, several hours. But throughout the rest of the year, you should also be doing tabletops with your teams, with other departments, internal tabletops. But each tabletop should be covering a different aspect of your incident response plan. So you should be at least evaluating all of your policies, procedures, and playbooks once a year. That's the minimum. But if you would otherwise practice your incident command every single time, do you know what incident command is? Do you know how to deploy it? Are people trained on it? Who's trained on what positions? Bring in an incident commander who hasn't done it in 3 or 4 months and put them in an incident tabletop to get them to practice. That way everyone's getting experience, everyone is growing. But those playbooks are really important because if you haven't tested your backup playbook, I'll put it this way, if you have not brought up your backups to full production, I'm not talking testing in a sandbox. I'm not talking just checking it with a solder. I'm talking about take a backup file, whatever that is in your environment, bringing it back up to full production. Then the question is, do you really have backups? Or do you have a bunch of files that are untested? Because I have been in organizations where they said, yep, absolutely, we got backups. Great, let's bring it up. Well, we can't do that. What do you mean? Well, we've never done it. Okay. I get to another one, they bring up the backups. They go, well, we have backups of this, but we don't have any of the supporting servers. DHCP, DNS, Active Directory, we don't have any of that in backups. Oh, so you did not bring back to full production? No. Okay. So, bad days. But if you actually work through that in a tabletop, someone will hopefully go, wait a minute, we've never done this before. Well, let's go practice it and let's train it. If you want to get better at something, what do you have to do? You practice. Musicians know it, martial artists know it, weightlifters know it, racers know it, pilots know it. But for some reason, when I go in IT teams and IT security, they don't practice. So anyway, that's my little tidbit.
I've seen that in organizations of all sizes.
Yeah.
Even very grown-up, very large companies that should absolutely have that.
Yep.
So, and it comes down to a fundamental principle that applies across everything we're talking about here, and that is assumptions kill, right? I can't remember what movie recently that was said, but anyway, the point is that so it's not good enough to have a backup plan, but if you don't have if you haven't proven right? Don't ever assume anything. So when it comes to backups, disaster recovery, if you've never actually gone through a full exercise, not just talking about it, that's important too, right? Ensuring you have a communications plan and the people that are in that plan still exist at the company, by the way. If you don't do that, you don't know. You're making an assumption. You're assuming that your plan exists, that it's effective, that you'll actually be able to come out the other side with something that's functional. Man, you stole my thunder on that one. Yeah, because I literally walked into a medium-sized organization that told me they had a backup plan. They didn't have a procedure. And in the back and forth I had with them to get those things developed, realized that they had been backing up. First of all, they'd never tested restore. And they would have failed if they'd ever needed to, because apparently sometime a sysadmin had rotated the encryption key for their backups, but didn't store that new key somewhere they could retrieve. So they've been encrypting their backups with a key that they no longer had access to. Their backups were completely useless, right? And exactly that. Yeah. Wow, we haven't even talked about ransomware. Whoa. So anyway, no, great point. But yeah, in the end, assumptions kill. So don't ever, I even talked to software developers on this, right? Vulnerabilities are just assumptions they made in the design or the implementation of the system, right? They missed a use case, or an abuse case, right? Assumptions kill.
Thanks, folks. Oh, do you want to add?
Just real quick. When you guys are talking about the backups, you're taking me back to when I was performing third-party due diligence, and one of our clients, it was a law firm. They were receiving backups. You know, they had a, I wouldn't totally say MSP. It was a local IT organization that they employed, small business. Well, when I looked at the questionnaire, I noticed he said in the backup, it was dealing with this company. So I said, let me look this company up. I looked it up because the address that he gave, I said, let me just look this up. It was his house. So if you're going to do these tabletops, I say all that to say, because when we did go to visit the organization, we actually went to them, and I asked the question, so where is it stored? Where do you store their backups? It was in a plastic bucket with 13 other companies that he worked for.
Oof.
In his closet. So it wasn't protected in any way. So if they were to try to perform a tabletop, they can't do anything with that.
They just walk in with the bucket.
Right.
Okay, so I want to add to a question to that, because I've got, very recently, I had a customer, and I'm going to try to be really careful on the details. They had a situation where their server infrastructure was in a person's garage, and they wanted to terminate this person. Several things, several definitions of that word. But they wanted to terminate his employment, and so they hired us to come in and audit the information to determine what all they needed to do to protect themselves and get as much as we could. There's a lot of parts to that story, and I don't want to go into a lot of them, but I will say this. They were charged a lot of money for us to sit in body armor with the sheriff's department to raid that house to take the servers and all the infrastructure equipment out of the garage. Don't do that. Do not let people have servers and infrastructure at their personal residence. I don't want to do that again. That's our third. Anyway, that's just a little tidbit just to make people laugh.
Well, you all just turned this into an episode of security horror stories, so thank you for that. Security horror story podcast coming soon. So we have a few more minutes. I want to give you guys one more quick question that I think is important for the team, for you guys to kind of take back. But How can industry collaboration and information sharing enhance the collective cybersecurity defenses? So we're all here, we all have intel, we're all of mostly sound mind. How do we collaborate?
So if you're, I'll just start if I may. If you're not a member of your local chapter of InfraGard, that's a good place to start. I've been a member for 8+ years, or no, probably 10+ years. I was on the board for 7+ years. So it's a great place to get to know your peers. It's a great place to know law enforcement. It's a lot nicer having a law enforcement in your cell phone because you've talked to them before than to have that initial call that you have a problem and you need for them to come see. So engage, when you're at these events, I mean, look around. If you haven't introduced yourself to the person next to you, introduce yourself. I know we're IT, we're a bunch of introverts, but you got to step out of that turtle shell and go meet the people next to you. And, I've met so many wonderful people doing these sort of things over the years. This is where you build your network, and then you can bounce ideas off. I got a Signal channel. We got, LinkedIn stuff. I meet with a group of about 40 CISOs regularly in the area. We bounce ideas or problems, and, they know what you're going up against. And so it's nice to, have someone to talk to. So build that community around yourself. Introduce yourself to 2 people here before you leave. All right, 2 people. That's your goal for today. All right.
Love that.
Yeah, I'll second that with InfraGard. So, well, first of all, what we're talking about is public-private partnerships, right, between, well, I guess it could be public-public, but what we're talking about is public-private partnerships. So InfraGard's one of those. It's actually one of the largest vetted public-private information sharing collaborative organization. Vetted meaning, you have to apply and get cleared to be a member and get the information that they share with you. So yeah, you get that. So one of the benefits of this is shared intelligence, right? You get to not only get the intelligence from government agencies like FBI, CISA. CISA is a part, heavily engaged with InfraGard. They themselves, CISA, shares information with organizations. Companies can become members of DSAC, the Domestic Security Alliance Council, which is also ran by the FBI. I've got a really good story that you'll also see in the Equifax 2023 security report. Go out and read it. There was actually a story in there that I was aware of. I don't have all the details, but I know that. So back in 2023. So this is one of the benefits of being this. It's not just getting the information from your peers and the government on best practices, threat intel. But on that threat intel piece of it, it's true threat intel that you can get access to. So in our case, Equifax is a member of DSAC. We're also heavily involved in InfraGard. In 2023, CISA and FBI brought threat intel to Equifax about a threat actor that was planning on attacking us. Luckily, we got that threat intel early enough, and we were actually prepared for that attack. The attack did happen. We were prepared for it, and we defended ourselves. So that's the kind of information you can get from these public-private alliances that can help your organization. Trick question: who in this audience considers themselves part of critical infrastructure? Yeah. So okay, a few hands here. So in reality, if you're involved in information technology, you are critical infrastructure. So every one of you in this room has a seat at the table at InfraGard. You just need to apply, get vetted, and start joining our local chapters. Information security, of course, energy, right? All the classic critical infrastructure is important as well. As a matter of fact, operational technology, which we didn't even talk about here today, is an emerging threat as well. But if you want to hear about that, come talk to me. But every one of you here is part of critical infrastructure, no matter what size you are, because you'll be surprised, and I have stories about that too, about how something that happens to you, no matter what size it is, can have a butterfly effect through this entire country and affect national security. So, yeah, I'll stop there.
Thanks, everyone. So we have a few minutes left. I have a lot of drink tickets.
We've got looks like a question from online that came through. Is that where it came? And the question came is, how practical is conducting assessments of systems with functional teams to finance, HR, marketing with ad hoc meetings? How do they get buy-in? So I'll answer that just because I brought that up earlier. The reality is, the more you build relationships with all of these teams and you express to them your concerns in IT or IT security, and they express concerns from their point of view, you're building a stronger system, i.e. you're building stronger security. So maybe the first one won't be that productive, but the third, the fourth, the fifth, the sixth, the 10th, the 100th, you're going to build a really strong team of trust, a strong sense of respect for one another, and that collaboration is just going to build strength in the organization as it relates to security and privacy.
Thank you. Online individual for the question. Is there any questions in the audience? Do we have a mic for him? Gentleman right over there.
Okay, my question is in regards to vulnerabilities and threats like that. For example, a lot of things I want to do is identify threats by third parties. And I monitor a lot of different groups and everything, try to identify it. Is there any things that you guys do that can do it? And I'll give an example. Our website uses WordPress. So if WordPress is compromised or has a vulnerability, I immediately act to that and try to identify if we have that vulnerability in our environment. So obviously there's a ton of things that could happen that's outside of my environment that I not be aware of, but would affect me if it's infected in one of the applications we use. So basically my question is there any resources that you guys use to try to identify that and try to get it mitigated?
So a couple of areas that I'd recommend if you're not signed up with either US CERT or CISA, they give pretty much daily notices, and then if a product vendor has a CVE that's released, they typically release those. Usually it's about a day behind of most of them, especially with the major vendors. Any sort of, if you look at your environment and you know what systems that you have, which hopefully you do based off of your asset management, CMDB and everything, and get with those vendors to make sure that you are part of any sort of early warning list or anything there. If you work with any sort of MSP or any of your vendor partners, SHI, CDW, those type, a lot of times they produce newsletters with news from their vendors on what might be released. Podcasts, those sort of things. There's a lot of great daily ones. CISO Series has one. There's the the IC Stormcast is another one, or Sandstormcast is another one. Those are daily ones that gives updates of either what's happening on a vendor level or in a threat level. Really, you got to know your environment. Get signed up with ones that you have, and then really just kind of keep a close eye on there. I'm always distributing things to my teams. Hey, go look at this, and here's some IOCs that came across. Let's make sure we get them in the systems to start monitoring. The days, I always joke around, the days that we are in the office, they probably hate it because that's when I catch up on all my podcasts, and that gets my juices flowing, and then I come in, hey, we need to do this, and they're like, oh God, he drove into work today. So, those are things that you have to watch out, watch for, listen to, and there's so much information out there. But get in on CISA, US CERT, InfraGard, there's daily things, or multiple things that comes on through InfraGard. I know if you're not a member because of their little issue that they had a little over a year ago, they haven't started new membership yet, but at least get registered, get your application in, and they will do that.
Yeah,
Some chapters are. St. Louis isn't yet, but it's supposed to be coming soon.
Actually, it's live now.
It's live now?
we are
I know they were
taking
taking applications, but I don't think they were doing the due diligence yet. So last I heard.
I said, yeah, we are taking applications.
Okay.
6 minutes.
There's one more piece I would add to that is think like the attacker. So go to things like ExploitDB. If you've got a software list of all the softwares you use and all the different things, do what the attackers do. Go out there and see if you can find vulnerabilities for those softwares. One of the best things I ever did was take the OSCP course. I have not taken I've taken the test and I failed it. But the best thing to do is go take the course because it teaches you at least the basics of how the attackers attack, and they look at your organization, they find the vulnerabilities and they attack them. But a lot of times you can take a process, if you've got the software, go have maybe one of your SOC team or a help desk person or whatever, just go do a search on ExploitDB for all your software packages just to see what they find. And they say, well, if we have this version, we're this vulnerable with this RCE. Well, go to your configuration management and query your machines to see if you've got that version. So it's a real quick way to gather threat intelligence to make good decisions for your organization.
Yeah, I got one up on that one. So that's good. It requires a human, of course, doing the work. But and so does this, I guess, but you can automate it. So CISA I don't remember when they released it, but they now maintain what's called the Known Exploited Vulnerabilities Index. You can actually get a feed, and so you can automate this. So if you have a catalog of all the technologies you're interested in, of course you have to be careful, word matching and all that stuff, but it's updated constantly. So matter of fact, I know we're using it as part of our threat intel program because that's how you want to prioritize how you're addressing your vulnerabilities, because if it's a known exploited vulnerability, meaning it's being exploited today, you need to absolutely address those. So that's another good way to get that threat intel is through CISA. So just look up their known exploited vulnerabilities catalog.
And if I'm not mistaken, I do believe you said dealing with your third parties and vendors. Okay. I recall BitSite.
Yep.
When I was performing that in my past, BitSite does provide vendor information in regards to what's going on, well, with that vendor. But Recorded Future, when we had the demo, you can utilize, you had to pay for it, but they do provide you with a list. You could provide them with the list of vendors that you need, and they will send you intel on those vendors.
Yeah, there's a number of third-party resources out there like Risk Recon, Third-Party Trust, BitSite. There's a few more that I can't, not off the top of my head. But we do have 2 minutes, so I don't know that I have much time for another question because you guys are so awesome at answering them. FutureCon, just want to thank you guys for having us. Panel, thank you for your insights and knowledge. This was really good. And audience, thank you for your questions.
Yeah.
Nice seeing you again. Thank you.
Stay here. 94.
All right. Another big round of applause for our panelists. That was fantastic. All right, my Vanna